first started the Jumpin Hot Club in early December 1985. It was started because I used to do a music fanzine called Jumpin Hot, and decided that the music that I was writing about, there wasn't anywhere in Newcastle to see that music. And so we looked all about Newcastle at the time, and we found the seediest, the darkest place we could find, which was the Bridge Hotel cellar bar.
Have you ever seen clips of the Cavern? You know, when the Beatles had played there, it was a bit like that. It was down some stairs, and it was a very small room, and you were very close to the audience, and it was smoky and it was loud, and it was great actually. It was a really good live venue. A bit scared for that first gig, as you can see by the looks on our faces. We actually looked terrified. It was actually a bit scary because people were so close at first. But yeah, great live venue.
Well, of course it's changed. There wasn't many venues when we first started. There was the Riverside, but we started before Riverside. It's like the City Hall and the Mayfair. Well, there was very few venues, and especially small places. So now you've got like a heck of a lot of arts and music venues now. In fact, compared to anywhere, I think Newcastle's pretty well up there. All these international acts that would never have come to Newcastle, we started putting them on before anybody else, and it just grew from there.
I always remember once we'd done a Jumpin Hot Club gig, and a couple of weeks later we were flying over to Switzerland to do some more gigs, and I sat on the plane and this huge bearded bloke came up, and it just so happened that he was a South African living in Switzerland on business in Newcastle, and he'd heard about the reputation of the club.
Before Adam's been there since the start. He's more the boss sounds reggae stuff, and he does the funding as well, the refugee work. We do some refugee work, and but I mean, he comes to most of the gigs that I put on, so he's still right behind us as well.
They've expanded. They started off as like roots, young people promoting the music that they loved, you know, from reggae. They started the first African festival in Newcastle, the Harambe Festival, and they developed from, we were all drinking buddies. We used just to get together in the Royal Bar, and take the Royal Bar, and we'd just have, some of us were ex-punks, buskers, who loved music, you know, and so they were music fans, but they had a lot of knowledge.
I think any venue with a good reputation like that does, yeah, and people all over the country know it, people all over the world know it now, I imagine, so yeah, it's always going to help bands.
Obviously there's a great following for this kind of music in this area, so it's just good unity of the two.
I can tell that they already treat musicians differently to other places and all that. Yeah.
Every year I'd do something, you know. When my band started doing well in the 80s, my manager he'd say, "Oh, you can't do it." You can't. I'd say, "Well, we can't, because it's like my spiritual home. I got a lot of education from it."
Where they were then, you know, they've moved on to better things. No, good luck to them. They've done well for a couple of lads from the northeast.
Graham from Jumpin Hot Club came down to Austin, Texas 1 year, I think in the spring, probably during South by Southwest, and saw my band and me and my partner Noel McKay, and he invited us to come over to England, and we came for Summertime Fest a couple of years ago, and this will be our second trip.
I think I first got involved with the Jumpin Hot Club about 5 or 6 years ago. I was playing with a bluegrass band at the time, and here it's a really kind of close-knit team, and they do gigs all around Tyneside, and I guess their big gig is like the Americana Festival at the Sage, so I've done that pretty much every year that it's run.
I love this place. There's a real spirit of being alive. Again, same thing, when we walked in, you know, it just feels like rock and roll. The energy's electric, and it's just good fun, good rock and roll.
It covers such a wide variety of music, and what would normally be called the off mainstream That's country, folk, blues, reggae, and bluegrass, and a range of Americana music, for example.
I would say the choice of artists that we've got now is best that we've had in 29 years. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's probably more of a vision of what we want the Jumpin Hot Club to be now than it was 29 years ago.
Everybody knows the Jumpin Hot Club. We do supports around the country with American artists, and they all know Graham, they all know the Jumpin Hot Club, and it's really important. Without him, you wouldn't have any American roots people from about Edinburgh all the way down to, say, Leeds or Manchester. So it's really important, and everybody knows that Graham's a really good promoter, and certainly, I think he's the best in the country, but I'm biased, I guess.
The fact that they've lasted 30 years is a testimony to that they're doing lots of things right and maintain audiences. If there were no audiences there, they wouldn't have lasted 30 years, would they?